Okay, I think just a couple more people. And we have, just so that we have 5 attendees participating in the meeting. I'm going to share my screen.
Does anybody know, so is this meeting, people can attend this meeting now, right?
Correct.
So where's the link for this? Somebody just texted me and asked me.
It's on the published agenda.
Okay.
I'll
find it.
Yeah.
Thanks.
All right, Katura.
Is Roger with us?
I got lost in the dark halls of Zoom, trying to wander from one Zoom to the next. It was dark. I felt I was in a maze. I almost never got out.
Welcome.
Nice to be back. Nice to be back.
Like a virtual Hogwarts or something.
Oh my goodness.
Okay, glad you made it. Nice to see everyone. So we've already been in executive session. So we're now continuing our meeting in this new webinar. I believe that, Greg, was there anything you wanted to say first, or are we moving into the public hearing?
No, so we'll move right into the public hearing on school choice.
Okay, so we'll have that public hearing now.
Okay. So every year, the school committee is required to hold a hearing on school choice. So school choice is an interdistrict school choice program, which has been placed in the Commonwealth since 1991. And basically it allows, school choice allows a parent or guardian to enroll his or her child in a school district other than the district in which the child lives. And under the school choice law, which was amended under in 1993, all districts, school districts in Massachusetts are presumed to participate in and to admit non-resident students through school choice. So there's presumption that all districts participate in school choice unless a school choice committee chooses to opt out or withdraw from school choice. So again, a receiving district can withdraw from school choice only if the school committee holds a public hearing on the issue and then votes to withdraw. And this evening's public hearing is to hear the recommendation of the superintendent around school choice. So just a little bit of information on school choice. So there is some flexibility with school choice. School committees may specify the schools and grades in which our seats are available for non-residents, which means if we had smaller class sizes in a particular grade level or school, we could designate a number of seats to fill those seats if the school committee chose. So we can select specific grades, programs, and schools. And I'll just comment that as it stands now, our class sizes are healthy. They're below the class size policy limits, but not that far off from the ceiling. So again, obviously when admitting students through school choice, we cannot discriminate. We cannot look at past discipline history. And basically it's by lottery in which we accept school choice students. Unless there's 5 seats at a particular grade and only five students have applied for that seat. And then just in terms of the selection process must take place prior to July 1st. And then again, if there were seats available and we had new applications, there's another window, and that needs to take place before November 1st. So it's my recommendation to the Southborough School Committee is to withdraw from the school choice program for the 2021 academic year for the following reasons. So the tuition for a school choice student is $5,000 per student, where the actual per pupil expenditure for a resident student in Southborough is $18,070. Although the $5,000 would be a means to generate revenue, you never know what type of needs a school choice student might bring to his or her schooling. They might need additional special education support, social emotional support, and that all comes at a cost in terms of staffing and resources. So another pro for school choice is that, again, if we had low enrollment, we could fill seats. That is not the current case in Southborough. And once we accept a school choice student into our district, the student would remain in our district through grade 8. And that does not guarantee entrance into Algonquin Regional High School. That is a separate entity. So their experience would end at grade 8 and they would have to return to their home school. I already mentioned there's a potential for a student to require significant resources. And then lastly, just this year, the concern about the COVID-19 health situation and overall impact on our fiscal year 21 budget and the potential to, again, the potential impact, I'm making a recommendation to the school committee to withdraw from the school choice program. So at this time, since it is a public hearing, I will see if there are any questions from the audience.
Okay, I know we have several people on who are attending the meeting from the public. If anybody has any comments or questions.
So through the chair, I see no comments or questions at this time.
Okay. So that closes the public hearing on school choice. We'll be voting on this issue later in the agenda.
All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, so then we'll move on to audience sharing, another opportunity for people to share if they'd like to. Does anyone have anything they'd like to share? Any comments, Greg?
No comments, no questions at this time.
Okay. All right, so we'll move on to new business. Number one under that is the COVID-19 health situation.
So just a quick update and an opportunity for the school committee members to ask questions of our directors. Just in general, we've, since the survey, the Ennisboro Connect 2.0 survey results, principals have taken a closer look at some of the feedback and have made some minor adjustments and changes to Ennisboro Connect 2.0. We've been focusing a lot of our attention on the fiscal landscape and the fiscal outlook and revisiting our budgets. And really, we're starting to look forward. So we're starting to look at ending this academic year, making sure we are doing the transitions that we typically do when school's in session, but also looking forward to the fall to think about what the academic year will look like in the fall of 20 and making sure that we're prepared for various scenarios. Really a key date for us is Monday, is May 18th, when the governor will provide some new guidance. We're working closely with Mary Ellen and Dr. Medina, the district physician, around thinking about our requirements to reopen. And at this point, I do want to have Becky give a kind of a financial summary of where we are in fiscal year 20 and some of the financial impacts we've experienced since closure, which began on March 13th. So I'll turn it over to Becky at this point in time.
Greg, do you have the spreadsheet? Oh, there we go. Excellent. So I wanted to give you an overview where we're seeing savings and where we're also seeing some expenses related to the closure. We've gone through each and every line item in our budget and looked at all of our contracts, and we are anticipating seeing savings in some of our utilities, the electricity, heating, and water and sewer. Also, due to the closure in March, our Trottier's spring season of sports, those activities were not able to be held. We also, I had mentioned at the combined meeting that we've negotiated with NRT for a reduced rate for our transportation contract. And when we were talking at the combined meeting, it was 80%, and that has since been lowered to 78%. And I know that Katora signed off on that MOA with NRT, about a $30,000 savings in our transportation costs. We also had other transportation. Those were items that were in our line item for trips in the spring, some athletic transportation, and those will not be happening, so a small amount of savings there. And then some of our instructional materials, some classroom supplies that are no longer needed, some textbooks, a small amount of textbooks, mainly classroom supplies, and then also our daily substitutes, about $60,000 for daily substitutes for the remainder of the year. So you can see our potential savings due to the closure are about $213,000. We did have some related expenses. So we had custodial expenses. If you remember, at the beginning of March, we spent one weekend where we had our custodians come in and also our outside cleaning contractor come in and clean our buildings on a Saturday and Sunday. So this cost represents the overtime for that weekend. Also, we have been purchasing cleaning and nursing supplies, and we were able to purchase 2 of the misting devices, which will give us sanitizing ability in our schools. It gets a deeper clean than just the surface clean. And then finally, technology. We've had to purchase VPN licenses. We've purchased some scanners for staff so that they're able to work from home. And we've also purchased an expanded license for Zoom for obvious reasons. And then our food services, lastly, that's really the biggest expense that we have seen due to this closure. And that is related to the continued payment of our food service staff. Some of them are working, continuing to work as we deliver meals to the community and to our students, rather. We are seeing reimbursement from the USDA for the actual meals themselves. However, this represents the labor cost and the fact that we're not taking in revenue in the form of student payments. So our expenses are around $111,000. Which means that we do have a net budget impact to the good of $102,099 after all is said and done. There are other items that we're not able to kind of drill down on, such as trash collection, gas, that we do anticipate seeing further savings, but we feel that this is really a good number as to where we're coming in at right now.
All right, thank you very much. I have a question. Are we moving on to something, or is this a good time for that? I'm just wondering about food services. So I assume that there must have been some food that we didn't have to purchase because students we're not delivering the same volume of lunches as we would be serving. So does this food services, that just takes into account all of the savings versus extra expenses and rolls it all into, so net it's costing that. Would we be paying the food services employees anyway, though, if schools were open?
We would be, however, we'd also be collecting the meals.
I see.
Yes, yep.
Okay, gotcha.
So that's the big difference, the fact that we're no longer collecting those daily lunch charges. That's where the offset is coming from.
So Keith, would you like to speak to the actual food and using inventory within our cafeterias?
Sure, absolutely. Kyle Parson, our food services director, has done a really nice job of maximizing the supplies that we already had. Certainly back in the beginning, it was the perishables, and now we're to a point of using a lot of the frozen foods that have been in the schools. As soon as the closure was extended through the rest of the year, that also opened up another set of supplies for him. So I think he's done a really nice job of mitigating any additional expenses that would have been incurred if we didn't have that supply already in hand. Going forward in the opening of the school, like Greg had mentioned, and the uncertainty of that's the next thing we're kind of looking ahead to. But as of now and for the remainder of this school year, we're in a good position with our inventory.
Okay, thank you for all of that, Becky and Keith.
Welcome.
And then we also have other directors, if there are any specific questions through the chair that committee members would like to ask around COVID-19.
I have a question. Sorry, I don't know why my video is off. But I was wondering, when you talked about preparing for the fall, is there any information on whether or not there's going to be an issue with class sizes or space if regulations are that you have to have certain distance between students and those kind of things?
So at this point in time, we have no information around what the requirements will be in terms of social distancing and what that might look like for our schools. We're working very closely with the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. So we're hoping to get more information in the next week with some of the information the governor provides. However, we're preparing for a variety of scenarios. So we're preparing for if it's a typical year and we can start as we do in a normal year. We're also preparing for if we have to provide social distancing, what could the scenarios look like in terms of, do we have odd even days? Do we have half days? What does that look like? And we're working through some of those scenarios just to be proactive. But at this point in time, we don't have any guidance, any specific guidance. And as soon as we receive it, we'll start doing that planning.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from the committee?
Yeah, I have a question. What's the general sense, in the last month on how Ennisboro 2.0 is going, especially for the younger kids and the parents who, I think it was brought up last time, there were, it's difficult for working parents, especially to deal with this whole thing, but any sort of update on how all that's going?
Yeah, and I'll just make a general comment and then principals can share some of the experiences. I think the longer that remote learning extends, and this is really nothing to do about Ennisboro Connect 2.0, the more challenging it is becoming for families to keep their sons and daughters engaged in learning and keep up the routines and try to maintain their work home teacher balance. So we're seeing, we're hearing more and more from families about the real struggle that they're having, just trying to keep up and maintain this. I guess the comment we hear most is they can't wait till school opens and we can get back to some sense of routine. I'm not sure if Principal Valente or Mr. Hershuk, Mr. Mucci, or Mr. Clayton want to share any of their thoughts that they're hearing.
Greg, I would echo what you just mentioned. I think there's peaks and valleys. We've had some good stretches, and we've had where attendance has been high, participation has been good, and then we've had some weeks where kids have not been as engaged as much as we wanted. I think the one thing that we have committed to throughout all of this is that connectedness. And that has been an important component. So our students are still connecting with their teachers, they're still connecting with counselors, and they're still connecting with one another. The academic demands and balance is a fluctuation for families, and it's kind of a case-by-case basis. So we continue to take feedback, adjust accordingly, and support our students the best we can.
Yep, I absolutely agree with what Gary said, and it's a day-to-day basis, and we're just making sure that we are looking at students, making sure if they aren't attending, we understand the reason why they're not attending, reaching out, making sure that we are taking notice of every student, and teachers continue to look for opportunities to make the learning fun and engaging. They're seeking out other ways to deliver the instruction to students, understanding that as the weather gets warmer, we too want students to be outside and enjoying the weather, but we also want to be providing that direct instruction as well. So teachers are really doing a phenomenal job seeking those other opportunities and other activities to engage students, but it is getting trickier. But keeping that in mind, we want to make sure that we are capturing as many students as we can, and those that we aren't, making sure we understand the reason why. And every day it changes, and we don't know what's happening in the homes, but we want to make sure that we're providing the support that students and families need.
Yeah, I would echo those points. We've all held principal coffees or parent coffees at this point, and heard from community members. All of us are stressing the idea of flexibility and putting ourselves in parents' shoes at home. We're all parents ourselves, and we are kind of weathering the storm together. So flexibility is something that we continue to stress with all parents and families. We want to hold kids. We want to provide them with routines that will help them be successful when we do return in the fall, but at the same time understand that every family is dealing with a different situation. And to Kathleen's point, the check-ins have really been helpful. We've been able to identify those students who really need or are in need of technology at home. And through those daily check-ins and regular communication, we've been able to provide the support that they need so that they can participate, because some of those families we weren't hearing from at first, but our regular participation really shed a light on those families who are in need.
I would echo everything that the other principals have mentioned. I'd add, though, the part from an early childhood perspective is the confusion that a lot of our younger kids have when it comes to home and school. They really had a hard time grasping the idea that they were going to school at home. We've always kept those separate, and school has represented physical connection, physical experience with our kids, which cannot be replicated or duplicated online. And that's been probably the biggest struggle for our kids in terms of their engagement. The other part, I really have to give credit to all of the Finn parents who are true co-teachers in this new normal of education, because without them, our kids would not be able to access our learning and sustain the engagement that they've had. So I appreciate everything that every single family has done in trying to help their kids access what we've been putting forth each week.
All right, thank you so much for all of that. I will say that from the feedback I've gotten from people in the community and my own experience is that the Ennisboro Connect has really there's a lot of information there, and there's a lot of good connection and learning material for the kids. And I do think it's a strange situation because I feel like you keep thinking you're gonna feel like you're in a routine, and it just you never quite get there because this is just so strange. And so I really, I know I speak for a lot of people when I say that we really appreciate everything that the teachers and administrators are doing to make this even a tenable experience during this bizarre time. So it's been really, really well done. And I think some of the adjustments that have been made since the survey have been very positive. I know it hasn't been a massive amount of adjustment, but tweaks here and there can make a really big difference. And it's really something to see. So thank you for all of your work on all of that.
Katura, can I just make a comment too on, so one of the moves that we've made as a district is to actually purchase Zoom, which gives us more control and more secure use of the Zoom tool, which we're going to be launching professional development for educators on what that will look like, with the hopes that it will be used more often for real-time connections. And the last comment is much of the feedback that we received from NSBoro Connect 2.0 is more systemic change, that it's really aligning the way we create courses in Canvas in a consistent way, or Google Classroom or Bloom's, which is what we're looking to do as we look to the fall, if we need to move to some type of remote learning in the fall. Building much more consistency and predictability in terms of the tools and resources that we're using.
Okay, great. Any other questions on COVID before we move on? Okay, so the next item, thank you so much everybody for all of that. The next item is the Finn School Improvement Plan.
So we have the very talented and dedicated Mr. Ryan, who will give a Finn update on the school improvement plan. And I will be driving his presentation this evening.
Yes, and thank you for clarifying. It is an update. I hope that didn't cause any confusion. I'll wait for my assistant to get the PowerPoint up.
Somewhere on my screen. Actually, Clayton, it's probably just as easy if I just give you the host capabilities.
Okay. Is that up on the screen? Can everybody see that?
No.
Not yet.
Yeah.
No.
I don't think you've shared it yet, Clayton. Yeah, it hasn't been shared yet.
There we go.
There you go.
Right now. Okay, good. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. I will start. Let's see. Ooh. Now, I'm not able to move this. Oh, yes, I am. Never mind. All right. So I just want to start by mentioning that the month of May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and this year's theme is Tools to Thrive, which explores practical tools for everyone to use to improve their overall mental health and increase personal resiliency, something we desperately need at this time with the current scenario. I've included a link in this PowerPoint for more information. If interested, hopefully I'll have this on the Finn website and the district website. So first I'd like to thank the Finn School Council and the staff for their collaboration and hard work on our progress. Joni Ornberg, kindergarten teacher, Jen Henry, preschool director and co-chair, Alexis LeBlanc, student support services, Betsy Loeffler, grade 1 teacher, Allison Stevens, preschool teacher, Caitlin Horman, student support services, our parent reps, Michael Imhoff, Michelle Poulos, Jen Delon, she's a kindergarten parent, and our community representative, the extended day director, Kerry Packard. How I'd like to present this update is to speak to the work we've accomplished by reviewing our established action steps, which were developed in our school improvement plan. Also included in each slide is a photo, which I believe illustrates a sample of the work that has taken place in that area. I'd also like to remind the committee that each of our 2 goals were taken directly from established district strategic focus areas. So district strategic focus area, curriculum and student support services, goal 1. The Finn School staff will enhance student learning by developing a school infrastructure that can integrate and support a comprehensive and research-based social emotional SEL curriculum. A lot of work has happened in this area. As I mentioned previously, we have many different programs in our schools throughout the district in place to support SEL. Some are redundant and some actually complicate the work or make it more challenging to get the work done. In the fall, I surveyed our staff to get a sense of their opinion of what's been used and what's been effective at Finn. And what we came away with is the need for a simple, established curriculum that is developmentally appropriate, creates a foundation which can be built upon grade to grade, is flexible enough to adjust to the needs of every classroom and our individual students. While we haven't quite found a program that meets everything we want, we all agreed that our established CARE program, compassion, acceptance, respect for everyone, is something we want to continue and expand upon. The photo included in this slide is one of our recent monthly CARE assemblies. As a matter of fact, our last one before the closure in March. Our CARE assemblies follow a scope and sequence that we've established, which includes a rotation of participation for every classroom, pre-K, K, and 1, where they develop a whole school presentation with activities for the month's themes. We found that when students create and take an active part in the presentation, in the development of the presentation, there's more individual and collective buy-in, and there's greater carryover to the school culture. Making SEL, social emotional curriculum and programming recommendations for cross-curricular implementation and developmental scaffolding. This photo, which illustrates the recipe for friendship soup, is a good example of how one of our SEL themes, friendship, which was introduced and promoted formally at our March CARE Assembly, has developmental and cross-curricular connections. Every class read the book before attending the assembly, and students from pre-K through grade 1 participated in a wide variety of activities related to the friendship soup theme. Some drew and colored vegetables, other students wrote aspects of the recipe during their writing blocks, some created recipe math problems through variations of the recipe itself, and ultimately all students created their own recipe for their class. Develop a professional development framework to increase faculty readiness to teach social emotional learning. This is an area that we're really excited about. In October of this past year, the Department of Education sent out an invitation to districts across the state asking for participation in a social and emotional learning pilot for grades 1 through 3. As I mentioned previously, Massachusetts only has SEL standards for pre-K and K, and they're currently developing standards for the other grades. So with Greg's permission and Rhoda's direction, Finn, Woodward, and all 4 Northborough elementary schools took part in the SEL pilot. Participants were asked to inventory, share, provide feedback on the effectiveness of their existing SEL resources and programming. This was a perfectly timed opportunity for us because it allowed our SEL leadership team to survey our staff about their current resources and programming and make recommendations for establishing our SEL priorities. As I mentioned in the previous slide, we were all in agreement that what we wanted was something simple and flexible. And an added area from the survey was the focus of teaching all of our students self-regulatory skills at every grade. After we and other districts submitted feedback, the department recognized that there's a tremendous variation across the state in all SEL programming. We're looking forward for continued participation with the Department of Education in their next phase of this work. Another area we're continuing to focus on is our Open Circle program. Open Circle was found to promote and reinforce care themes in a more detailed manner with specific classroom activities that carry over from the classroom. In addition, Open Circle provides common language, explicit SEL skill instruction, and opportunities for everyday skill practice. And on March 3rd, during our Professional Development Day, we had Dr. Jerry Schultz, that's the picture of him in the bottom right-hand corner, facilitate a training on how all staff can address SEL needs of all of our students in their daily work. The goal of this training was to start to develop a core competency in practical SEL strategies for everyone to use each and every day. Our SEL leadership team recognized early on that too often our SEL work is compartmentalized and typically used in response to an SEL challenge, not proactively. We recognize the need to adjust that perspective and to make SEL instruction part and parcel of all that we do each and every day. The next slide is to develop community partnerships with parents to assist parents and community organizations in supporting SEL at home and within the greater community. We're continuing to have our parent coffees with a focus on building greater parent connections, and we've established a rotation of themes which we'll be adding to throughout the year. At the preschool level, our parent work has a strong focus on connecting with our families who are English language learners. As Rhoda had mentioned in one of her recent presentations, our preschool families are more and more diverse, and almost half of our preschool families speak a second or third language within their home. We're also working on a scope and sequence with themes including parenting, school home academic support, and overall SEL development within the community. Excuse me. I'm also excited to talk about our participation in the early learning study through Harvard's Graduate School of Education. This is the second year of us participating in this study. And this study looks into the types of learning in care settings, public and private, and activities students take part in across their day that maximize student growth and success. Students whose parents voluntarily enrolled them were observed in their classrooms, in their learning environments analyzed for factors like available resources, student groupings, one-on-one and small group teacher time, as well as opportunities for free time and play. The study includes about 5,000 children from across the state, and according to information provided to me this year from the study's lead researcher, Finn had the most families participate from any school. The study has yet to release their findings, but the feedback we receive will be used as part of our professional development programming. So far, the feedback from the researchers who have been in our school, they've told us that the programming that we have in place in our early grades is on par with what all students need for success. And lastly, building upon new and exciting community partnerships. Last spring, I sent out emails to area colleges and universities that have clinical psychology programs specific to children. And I asked if they'd consider Finn as a student placement. William James College, formerly known as the Massachusetts School of Professional Psychology, sent us 2 third-year PhD students. They were supervised and directed by our school psychologist, Kathy Wilson. And with parent permission, they were able to work with our students, helping them identify their emotions and how emotions and behaviors are connected. We also have a new relationship with Western Governors University, who sent us 2 student teachers this fall and this spring. And we're continuing with our ongoing relationship with Framingham State University, where we regularly have between 6 and 10 student teachers during the course of our school year. And I'd also like to mention that our ongoing relationship with Southborough Youth and Family Services, where Sarah Castle continues to offer on-site support with her clinicians, many of whom who work with our students one-on-one in small groups, supporting their emotional and psychological well-being. And their work also carries over to our students' families as well. This next slide, develop means by which SEL skills and competencies can be assessed. This is an area still in progress for us, as we want to make sure that what we measure and how we measure it is aligned with our district's vision and our district's priorities. As I've mentioned previously, there are numerous programs available, all with their own tools to measure SEL growth and progress. Whatever we select, we want to make sure that the tool we have not only provides us with student SEL data, but also data on school climate, safety, and student and educator engagement. The next area is in science, with the strategic focus area curriculum. Goal 2, Finn School staff will align its science programming curriculum practices to meet the needs of all learners. The work we've done in this area has been built upon something I mentioned in my initial presentation, and that's our students' inherent curiosity. When we started discussing our science program at Finn and the ways to improve it, we quickly realized that our students engage in more science-related activities throughout their day than in any other content area. And the amazing aspect of this is that their time is not scheduled as, quote, science. What we realized is that the times when our students are finished with their work and engaging in free time activities, indoor recess, or even eating their snack, a good majority of them are engaged in some sort of science-related activity. For example, children will, without prompting, stack, count, rearrange, take apart, manipulate their personal items, their toys, their tools for learning, and their snacks. And this is true for students with special needs and students who are English language learners. In response to this, we're trying to include more science terminology and concepts through general discussions and casual conversations. We believe this will help all of our students, including our students with special needs and English language learners, increase their science vocabulary and general knowledge base. This next slide, create a baseline metric of big questions and essential understanding using established thinking routines, questions within all science-related activities, experiments, and demonstrations across all grades. What we've been doing in this area is having consistent cross-grade meetings where teachers discuss and compare science-related learning activities and experiments and look for common themes post-activity to determine what needs to be refined. All grades have already adopted the simple yet powerful thinking routine questions which stimulate more curiosity in thinking. For example, what do you see? What do you think will happen if? Why did this happen? And the photo in this slide is a great example of the foundation of this process in one of our preschool classrooms. The photo shows a well-known scientist who the students refer to as Professor M, and his assistant conducting an experiment in the preschool classroom. I must note there were no injuries after conducting this experiment. The next area is design, fund, and implement Makerspace activity areas within each grade classroom. Just a reminder about what a Makerspace is. It's a popular term. It's basically a designated space where students have access to a wide variety of materials that they can use to create, invent, tinker, design, and make things. Originally, when we thought of this idea, the goal was to design, purchase, and establish former makerspaces within each classroom where students could rotate through and develop their creative and innovative skills. But during the planning phase, we realized that this is another area where the work had already been done. Just the labeling wasn't there. In each of our classrooms, for years, we've had these designated areas, but they've been considered activity centers, which consist of bins of manipulatives where students can create, build, and experiment with all sorts of materials. Currently, the spaces are designated as activity or manipulative areas and contain a wide variety of simple, basic manipulatives. Because we feel that a great deal of our students' day is well structured and structured by us. We feel it's necessary that all of our students have scheduled opportunities for free time play or time in these areas. And while students are involved in making their creations or discovering something new, our staff will be asking probing questions to help students reflect upon their design and their thinking. The wonderful thing about these spaces is that they tap into every child's imagination, foster innovation, collaboration, risk-taking, and problem-solving, all while kids are having fun. And this area is promoting cross-curricular science integration by incorporating the use of science terms within literacy, math, music, art, and other content areas. Our work in this area has had a stronger focus on English language arts this year, where we've developed an approach to incorporating science themes within our Daily 5 literacy framework rotation. Betsy Loeffler, Sue Hughes, Kristen Schiavo, and I took part in a professional development day where we aligned level science books within kindergarten and grade 1. The book supported the Massachusetts science standards, and an added benefit was the efficiency with time on learning by increasing every student's exposure to informational text prior to a teacher's scheduled science block. This is extremely beneficial for students who require additional reinforcement of concepts and themes. And our next steps are to develop a new school improvement plan, which is better aligned with our upper grades 2 through 8. We want to continue to make social emotional programming part of every student's daily schedule, formalize the cross-curricular planning in SEL and science to include our specials, art, music, library, technology, and gym, and broaden our staff professional development in the areas of RTI, response to intervention, and differentiated instruction. I also want to note that we are still moving forward with the Finn Family Garden, and our crops will be expanded to include more vegetables that will benefit the food pantry. We've also had some good conversations with Chestnut Hill Farm and are hoping to incorporate field trips, in-school presentations on planting and farming, and visiting their farm next year with their new additions. So with that, I will take any questions and share back my screen to Greg.
All right, thank you very much for that. It's always very exciting to hear about the things that are going on, more specifically in the schools. So that's excellent. I have a question, which is that I think it's interesting that there were areas that were already happening or sort of fulfilling the plan, but we didn't have the name or the label on them. I think that's really interesting. What would you say was the area that saw the biggest progress because of the attention to the plan?
I would say probably SEL. The SEL, I would say the SEL work that we've been doing, especially with our current kindergarten class, has forced us to look deep into social emotional learning and our programming and adjust what we do to meet the needs of our kids. We say we do that all the time. This year, more than any other year that I can think of, we've had to do that with our current kindergarten class. I say that because developmentally, they're on the younger side. Social emotionally, they're not up to par with the prerequisite skills that we would anticipate and hope for with an entry of students. So we have really had to adjust our teaching, adjust our classroom management, adjust our whole school programming with SEL in that area. And that's something we're going to have to recognize we need to do each and every year. We have the advantage of our incoming grade 1 class being our kindergarten class, but we never really know, other than what comes from our existing preschool, what we're going to get for kindergarten. So we really need to be flexible with the programming and our supports in that area. I would also add that the area of mental health continues to grow and continues to be a concern, not just for our students at Finn, but for all students in the district, especially in the area of anxiety and stress, more so under these conditions. And that is an area that we're really we're trying to dive deep into, not just within Finn, but at the district level.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Can I just
Any other-
make a couple comments? I just
Yeah.
want to thank Principal Ryan and his faculty and staff. They do an amazing job at Finn School. They're truly student-centered and developmentally appropriate, and they're doing great work. So thank you.
Thank you.
Can I just ask a quick question? And it kind of relates not just to the, the improvement plan, but connects to the COVID ID situation. Clayton, and this could change. What do you think your biggest challenge will be at this age level in dealing with the kids coming back to school after this?
That's an excellent question, Roger. It's something that we've talked about at the district level in terms of supporting kids. As you know, the district prides itself on supporting kids through transitions, especially at the early grades, because we have so many changes in schools. Part of that is the closure that we bring to our relationships, into our educational journey within all of our schools. Kids, teachers, parents connect in a true, authentic way. And we're not going to have that this year. We, as I said at the beginning, we were talking about Annespero Connect 2.0. There's really no way to replicate that virtually. You can't have that goodbye hug or, tearful encounter or a thank you. You just can't do that under these conditions. So that's going to be the biggest challenge for us, and that relates to the entry of kids coming into the new grade. So we're rallying to try to figure out the best supports to put in place for our kids and giving them some closure, but also letting them know that it's going to be okay, that they're in good hands come their transition into their next grade in new school.
All right. Well, thank you for that answer.
All right. Anyone
If I could chime in
Paul?
there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was happy to see such a focus on the social emotional learning, and I was intrigued by what you said at the end about making sure this carries through to all the grades, and maybe that's something we could hear about more at a future meeting. Is how are we doing that? I think we have heard it probably from every principal in various plans, but I'd kind of like to hear sort of a comprehensive view of that issue, because I think it is hugely important. It's Clayton, as you mentioned, just with the stress level these kids, I guess at every age, but I certainly see it in high school kids, and I guess it doesn't start there. So just something to think about. That'd be something I'd be interested in.
I could just speak that it's been on Greg's agenda for a while in terms of his work and part of the programming and the strategic vision of our school. The Portrait of a Graduate, it was a huge part of all the work that we did. It's the challenge, I think, is the alignment, is really thinking about what's working, what can work. We don't have the guidance from the Department of Education in terms of standards, but I think each one of us knows what it is that our kids need, and we just have to go from there.
Yeah.
Just a general comment, I agree, Paul, that'd be a great topic to bring to an upcoming meeting. And I think the challenge is not that we're not focusing on social emotional learning, pre-K through 12. it's that there are just so many programs that really the focus is building coherence so that we have common language, common programming, so it builds upon, from grade level to grade level, from school to school. So we really build coherence in the programming that we're doing. So I think that's a great agenda item for a future meeting.
Okay, thank you so much. If we don't have any other comments, we will move on to legislative update.
So just 2 quick updates. The first update really is around staying tuned into what's happening at the state level in terms of FY21. We continue to hear the message that they're waiting to see what the revenues will look like at the state level before they make any decisions around the fiscal 21 budget at the state level. So Rebecca Pellegrino, Director of Finance, is staying closely tuned into that information. And any chance that we get to advocate on behalf of our district, we'll let the committee know. But the message right now is basically the state is waiting to see what their revenue projections will look like. And they want to make informed decisions. The second legislative update, and I think I mentioned this at a prior meeting, is Becky, through her work and her networking, has done some advocacy around special education and out of district. We have several students who are placed in private schools who have returned home, and we're working with the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education on advocating getting some type of financial reimbursement from those schools who are not providing services to those students at this particular time. Becky, I don't know if you want to add anything to that work.
Yes, so this week we actually composed a letter. It was a letter that was compiled by a number of business managers across the state, and we are all jointly signing this SOCATORA that has been sent out to you by DocuSign for your review and for your signature. And that will be sent to DESE and then also to OSD for reconsideration of the rates, since OSD actually sets the tuition rates, and they are set in statute. And so we are trying to advocate for some relief because we do not know what next year will look like in terms of services that will be requested of those students who are no longer in these residential programs. So that is something that has been done across the state. There are a number of districts who are having school committee members, town managers, superintendents sign on to that letter.
And those are the legislative updates for this evening.
Okay, thank you very much. Any questions from anybody? Okay, so we'll move on. We'll move on to school choice.
So again, as I presented in the public hearing, it is my recommendation to the Southborough School Committee to withdraw from school choice for the 2020-2020 academic year.
So I'd like to make a motion that Southborough Schools withdraw from the school choice program for the 2020-2021 year.
I'll second.
All right, anyone have any, I'll just say that I very much agree with that. I think given all of the information, it makes sense for the district. I don't know if there's any discussion on this.
I'll just say that.
Okay. All right, so we'll do a roll call vote.
Oh, wait, I think Paul.
Wait, Paul, were you gonna say something?
I was just going to say, this seems like a slam dunk.
Yeah.
If you just look at the numbers alone, every year it's the same story. So I don't see any difference this year.
Greg, I was just wondering, so I was doing a little bit of reading about this because in theory, it seems like a great idea that I wish we could support, but it just doesn't make financial sense. I read that the school choice, like the 5K reimbursement hasn't been touched in like so long. Is there any, I mean, obviously now with COVID, all the budgets are a mess, but before coronavirus, was there any talk at all about upping that reimbursement?
So with the Every Student Succeeds Act, as well as the reworking of the Chapter 70 funding formula, there were conversations around increasing the tuition rate to make it more, to incentivize actually accepting school choice students, but I don't think anything has changed for the upcoming fiscal year.
Yeah, I mean, the way things are, I wish we could support something like this. I think it's a great idea in theory, but it just doesn't make any financial sense for our district.
Okay, anything else? All right, so we'll do a roll call vote. Roger,
Yes.
Paul,
Yes.
Jessica,
Yes.
Jennifer,
Yes.
and it's a yes for me. So, all right, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Greg. The next item is ratification of the agreement with the Southborough Teachers Association.
So the school committee and the Southborough Teachers Association entered into contract negotiations early in December. We had many meetings with the Teachers Association and planning. We used the interest-based bargaining as the technique for negotiation, and we met, the committee met with the Teachers Association in January. We had a very productive IBB session and talked about a lot of contractual topics. And I'm pleased to share that the Southborough School Committee and the Southborough Teachers Association have come to an agreement. I think it's a fair compensation package. It increases some of the tuition reimbursement. There's some clarification in terms of language. And again, I just want to thank the school committee and thank our Southborough Teachers Association for the collaborative nature of the negotiations. We continue to have a very strong relationship and a strong partnership, and which is not always seen in other districts. So again, it's greatly appreciated and benefits our students.
Okay, I will just second everything that you just said, Greg, as far as seeing, being at the bargaining session and seeing firsthand. This was the first time I'd been through this process with renegotiating the contracts, and I am just blown away by the amazing relationship between the administration and the association and the committee, and it was very productive and positive, and I think very respectful, really great. And it just was another instance of how much, you know, I personally appreciate the teachers and everything, and just the positive relationship that we all have. So it's just great to see. And I think the resulting contract is evidence of that. So does anybody have anything before we make a motion and vote?
I just comment. I want to thank Heather Richards for her leadership through the negotiation process, as well as Becky Pellegrino for her work around the finances and in helping collect all the data. They provided great leadership to the process. So thank you, Becky, and thank you, Heather.
Yes, thank you.
Greg, there was some, I believe there was some language that was appropriate to memorialize a vote like this. So I'd like to make a motion to approve the collective bargaining agreement between the Southborough School Committee and the Southborough Teachers Association from fiscal year 2021 to the fiscal year 2023.
I'll second.
All right, if there's no further discussion, we'll do a roll call vote. Roger,
Yes.
Paul,
Yes.
Jessica,
Yes.
Jennifer,
Yes.
and a yes for me. All right, thank you very much, everyone. So that takes us to, on the agenda, old business. I guess we don't have any. And then the superintendent's report to the committee.
So in your packet are enrollments for the month. There's no significant variance at this time. And we are monitoring enrollments very closely, specifically around kindergarten. Principal Ryan, I'm not sure if you have an update on kindergarten enrollment for this month.
I do, Superintendent Martineau. We had, we were at 123 with 116 confirmed. The others are kind of in the wings, processing registrations. We have not had any inquiries. I did send out a kind of not a plea, but a request for families that have just moved in through My Southborough, just to let them know of the registration process, and we're still taking registrations, and Tracy King and I have not received anything other than that. So the number is pretty consistent for now.
Thank you. So just a last comment on enrollments. As we move to agenda item 4, the FY21 school committee approved budget discussion and the vote to amend FY21 budget, the enrollments will come into play around looking at next year. So in your packet is also the FY20 monthly general fund expenditure report, and I'll have Becky speak to that.
So our budget remains frozen right now. And as the monthly general fund report shows, we currently have $606,873 remaining on the bottom line, or 2.91%. Since the fiscal year is quickly approaching its end, the finance team is cleaning up any outstanding invoices and closing purchase orders that are no longer needed. We've also gone through and unencumbered funds based on our current needs and also on our projections. So we are in the final cleanup stages of the budget for this fiscal year.
So we'll need a motion.
Do we have a motion to approve?
I'll move that we approve the Southborough Public School District fiscal 2020 budget monthly general fund expenditure report as of April 30, 2020 until audited.
I'll second.
Okay, roll call vote. Roger,
Yes.
Paul,
Yes.
Jess,
Yes.
Jen.
Yes.
Okay, and a yes for me. Thank you.
So next in your packet is the FY21 budget calendar. So typically at this time of year, we would hopefully have a town meeting voted budget and would be thinking about next year. So I'm labeling this year the budget year that never ends. And there are a couple additional dates. The school committee operational budget subcommittee met last week. We also have a new town meeting date of Saturday, June 13th, where we'll present our fiscal year 21 budget. And so just a couple date changes and updates. And
Okay,
lastly, in your packet is the FY21 school committee approved budget. And I would like to share with the committee this evening superintendent's recommended amended budget based on the changing financial outlook due to COVID-19. We've been working very closely with Mark Purple, the town administrator, and Brian Ballantyne to collaborate and understand what the impact will be to the town and then in result to the school. Principals and district leaders have worked collaboratively over the past 3 to 4 weeks on really thinking about if we had to reduce our budgets, what would we reduce? So we've been engaged in scenarios from anywhere from a level funded budget to a 1% to a 2%. After conversations with Town Administrator Purple, we were given some direction to move forward a 2% budget increase over FY20. And this evening, I want to present to you what that budget would look like. And before I present this budget, I just also want to thank the principals and the directors for their work. This has been a tremendous amount of work and thought. None of the conversations around reducing budgets are conversations that are taken lightly or are necessarily enjoyable, but it's based on the context that we're in currently. So again, the school committee voted a school committee voted budget a few months ago, which resulted in a 4.02% increase over FY20. So with some direction from the town administrator and thinking about what the financial outlook, looking at the financial outlook, we were charged with moving forth a 2% budget increase over FY20. I won't go through all of the slides that were presented with the original budget, but I will share that, you know, typically again, this time of year, we would have hopefully town meeting approved budgets, and we'd be moving forward in terms of concluding the budget season and thinking about next year. But that work has continued as a result of COVID. When we looked to reducing the 4.02% to a 2%, the school committee approved budget priorities were very important in terms of looking at how we made our reductions. So we, as a leadership team, established criteria. The first criterion was thinking about line item reductions first. So basically the principle of things over people. Deferring some technology purchases, deferring some science purchases with the goal of saving as many positions as possible. The second criterion was around not eliminating programs, so that oftentimes when we look at budget reductions and we eliminate programs in future years, it's almost impossible to return those programs back into our schools. So that was a criterion we used. The third was really making sure that we kept positions that obviously positions directly impact the work that we do with our students. So we tried to minimize the impact on positions. And lastly, we used the lens of what budget reductions would have the least impact on the students' overall experience pre-K through 8. So that's really how we approached our work. And again, I applaud the principals for the work behind the scenes to get to this presentation. So the budget priorities in yellow were budget priorities that were extremely helpful in this process. So what you see on the slide is where we were in October. I think I shared with the committee that we began with an exercise really thinking about what our FY21 budget would look like if there were no fiscal constraints. What were some types of programs? What types of purchases would we like to see within our district? So that's where the budget started, the conversation started. We knew that was unrealistic, but it's an important exercise to think about a vision and what could be without any fiscal constraints. The second to the last column is where we landed in terms of a final budget. So we have a school committee voted budget of a 4.02% increase, which reflected an $837,195 increase over FY20. So what we're proposing to you, to the committee, recommending to the committee tonight is an amended budget of 2%, which is a $415,601 increase over FY20, or a $421,594 reduction over the 4.02% that the school committee voted a few months ago. So in terms of how did we land, how did we get to that 2% budget? And I'm going to have Becky speak to a couple of these line item reductions and changes.
So on the first line item for the special education programming, we were able to capture some savings this year using our circuit breaker funds that were originally appropriated for this current fiscal year that we're in. So we are going to be able to use $68,636 to prepay on tuitions for both out-of-district and collaborative programs because we are allowed to do that by state law. Additionally, as Greg mentioned, the principals and the directors have done a great job at going through their line items and have identified some additional line items where reductions could be taken, and those total $145,275. And then finally, the difficult conversations that we've had within our team has been on some additional staffing reductions. And those reductions reflect $207,683 in further reductions.
So in terms of budget offsets in terms of staffing. So again, from the 4.02% increase to the 2%, it's an additional 3.5 FTE educator positions that totals $207,683. And the specific positions have not yet been identified. But again, we've looked very closely since the 4.02% budget was voted. We've had some unanticipated staffing shifts and moves, and through attrition and through changes, we're trying to minimize the impact of these reductions. So again, the total staffing offsets for the 2% is $364,435. Becky, I'm not sure if there's anything you want to add.
No, just as Greg said, we have had some staffing moves that have occurred since the original budget was presented to you, and so we have been trying to kind of take advantage of those staffing moves so that there is the least amount of impact on our staff as possible.
So in terms of looking at the budget drivers, when we presented the 4.2% budget, the budget drivers have not changed. The FY21 amended budget still has a significant increased cost of out-of-district placements. Although we have great in-district programming through our student support services, we are seeing an increase of students who need a residential program that comes at a significant cost. It's not a lot of students, it's only a couple students, and it's the type of program that the students need in order to meet their needs. We also talked about the student information system upgrade. So we're using 20th century technology in the 21st century with our student information system. And this is an investment, the 30% part of the investment to shift our entire district pre-K through 12 to a new student information system. We had some digital curriculum upgrades, so specifically around mathematics at the elementary and middle school, and some shifts in history and social science curriculum work that resulted in a budget driver of $48,672. And then lastly, contractual obligations and line item increases resulted in a $278,874 budget driver. So what you see in this chart, again, in red is the superintendent's recommended amended FY 2021 budget. And above that in black is what the school committee voted at the 4.02%. So the superintendent's recommended budget is $21,236,475, or an increase over FY20 of $415,601, for a total budget increase of 2%. And this budget really reflects primarily a level funded budget with some level service increases in certain areas.
All right, thank you very much. I know that this is not easy, and there's a lot of. Oh, are you still talking? Sorry.
I just want to.
I thought you were done.
No, I'm almost done.
Okay, go on.
So just in terms of some changes, so we have reduced, as Becky shared, instructional resources. And then the impact, we just wanted to talk about the impact of this 2% budget. It is a reduction of 3.5 additional FTEs, which does directly impact services to our students, class sizes. Although we're still within our class size policy, school committee class size policy, it does increase some class sizes in certain areas. Again, it defers technology purchases, so we have a technology renewal cycle that it defers. We're deferring some classroom textbooks purchases and materials. It level funds our general supplies, and then also defers some library materials in FY21. And those are the impacts. And the last thing I'll say is that we've been very transparent, working collaboratively with our associations. We've been partnering all along this journey, and we've been very transparent and open, and they have been collaborative and wanting to partner with us to try to minimize the impact of any staffing or position reductions. So I just want to thank them for their partnership and their continued work as we move forward with this difficult budget. And that ends my budget presentation.
Okay. Thank you for that clear delineation. Apparently I need it. So thank you very much for that. And these are really difficult decisions, and I know it's not easy to go through all of this. I do have a question just for context. So I don't have the number in front of me. I probably should, but I seem to recall that when you look at the Southborough K-8 budget or pre-K to 8 budget, and then you sort of look at the Southborough contribution to the high school budget, that was a much lower percentage increase. And so then when you put them together, the overall increase for Southborough goes down. And so I'm just thinking in terms of context, when we present this to the town, what that overall percentage is at this point.
So right now we are in the process of amending the regional budget.
Mm-hmm.
And we have not presented that to the regional committee as of yet. The challenge when we talk about the regional budget is that it involves 2 communities. So although there is a negative impact in terms of the assessment to Southborough, there is a significant impact to the community of Northborough. So it's really working in partnership with Northborough and Southborough and trying to balance that impact. We were held harmless by Mr. Purple in terms of looking at our regional budget from a Southborough perspective. But the challenge is we were not held harmless looking at the regional budget from a Northborough perspective.
Okay.
So we are in that work, engaged in that work right now, and we will be presenting an amended budget to the regional school committee at their next meeting, which is a week from this evening.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You looking for a motion on this, Greg?
Yes, I think a motion would be excellent.
All right, so I will move that Southborough Schools approve the superintendent's recommended amended budget of $21,236,475 for the fiscal year 2021.
Second?
All right, any discussion before we vote?
Greg, could you go back to
Sure.
the slide with the reduction? Yeah, so the 3.5 additional FTE, I think that's what's going to catch people's eyes the most.
Yes.
Can you just clarify a little bit more about that? I just want to make sure that
Sure. So
that our people in the community understand what that really could look like.
So when we looked at our enrollment numbers for FY21, there were situations where we could reduce FTEs, positions, and still be within the class size policy ratios. So we have done that work, that analysis, and that is primarily where these positions are coming from. We also did some shifting and analysis of some of our programming and found that we could reduce a position, although not ideal, and still provide a level of service for our students. So those are in generalities, the areas where these positions are represented.
Hey, Jess, this is Roger. That's a really good question. And as a matter of fact, when the subcommittee asked the same question when we were going through these numbers, and I ended up being comfortable that this works without undue stress to the schools.
I think, again, our conversations with associations, we had a conversation this morning, and although we're still within our class size policy, the association and the district leadership team agree that even if there are 2 more students or 3 more students in a class, it does impact the students' overall experience. It's 3 more students that an educator has to provide feedback to. It's 3 more parents that a teacher has to engage in terms of making sure parents have what they need. So it does come at an impact. And the last thing I will share is that whenever we reduce FTEs and we have reduction in force, it's a loss to our organization. These are people behind these positions who we've invested a lot of time and resources, whether it's professional learning or having staffing understand how a school works. When we lose employees, we lose that as well, which isn't always a dollar amount you can put to, but it does have an impact.
All right, anything else before a vote? All right, we'll do a roll call. Roger?
Yes.
Paul?
Yes.
Jess?
Yes.
Jen?
Yes.
Okay, and a yes for me. Thank you very much, everyone. Okay, that brings us to, we'll skip educational policy, none at this time, policy development and/or distribution.
So you have distribution of approved policies, disposition of executive session minutes B210, and conflict of interest B280. So those are in your packet.
Okay, thank you. And then personnel items, personnel report.
So personnel report is in your packet.
All right.
And can I just comment on the personnel report? So in a typical year, we would have an opportunity to celebrate our retirees. I think at the June meeting would be nice to be able to acknowledge those educators who are retiring from our system and who have contributed significantly to our organization.
Okay, definitely. That sounds great. Okay, and then action on the minutes of the April 8th meeting.
I'll make a motion that we approve the Southborough School Committee open meeting minutes of our virtual meeting on Wednesday, April 8th, 2020.
I'll second.
All right, Roll call vote. Roger,
Yes.
Paul,
Yes.
Jess,
Yes.
Jen,
Yes.
and a yes for me. And that brings us to agenda items for next month. So we have on here election of officers, which normally, Greg, do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, so normally we do have, there's a school committee policy that speaks to election of officers after the election. However, the election is slated for June 16th. So Katura and I had a conversation. It's the will of the committee if we want to suspend the policy and at the June meeting vote election of officers.
Right, so our June meeting is on June 10th. So right before town meeting and the election, if we didn't do election of officers then, we would probably want to convene some sort of meeting to vote on it before the summer so that we have sort of continuity over the fiscal year. So we were thinking that in this instance, it may make sense just to vote on it on the 10th and get it settled, especially since we sort of know what's happening. Paul, that will be his last meeting. Very sad, but we'll have a tribute to him as well, I'm sure. And then also there's one person running for Paul's, well, there are two people running and two open seats. And so we sort of know who's going to be on the committee at that point in time. So if it makes sense to everybody, then we're thinking that we'll just vote on it then. Do we need to have some sort of motion to suspend the policy, Greg, or we just
Let
do
me
it?
check with legal counsel to see what the process should be.
Okay.
Well, is there any harm in waiting until the next, whatever the next regular
So
Well, the
our
next
last
regular,
meeting is
yeah.
the June 10th.
scheduled meeting is?
So we would have to have a special meeting to.
I mean, I would assume if you vote on this, then
Well, the next meeting after June 10th, I think is in September, right?
The issue is that the incoming members would not be able to vote on
Right.
the officers. I mean,
well, that's why I'm asking. I mean, is there any harm in just waiting?
right. That's the issue.
Well, what kind of work happens over the summer with the chair? Because would that put everything behind if we waited until the fall?
I mean, I'll speak from my perspective. So a lot of conversations over the summer take place with the chair around planning and preparing for the academic year. And typically there are issues that arise over the summer months that require attention and collaboration through the chair.
And it seems like we may have, I mean, there's probably a pretty good possibility of having some special meetings over the summer due to the coronavirus.
Yep.
Yes. So if it's the will of the committee not to elect officers on June 10th, I would like to call a special meeting prior to June 30th. So we can have the election of officers and move into the summer with those officials elected.
I actually think that's the most appropriate thing to do, to get the election done, but to at least as soon as possible after, it's determined who's going to be on the committee. I mean, I guess we know, but so that they can vote.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, we can do that.
Do we necessarily have to decide this right now?
No, we can.
No, we really don't.
Because well, we all know who the new member is going to be. We could just ask her.
She is a few doors up.
Yeah. I see her walk by my house every day.
You could probably wave to her right now.
Yeah, I guess you could ask her if it makes any difference.
Exactly. Yeah.
I mean, typically a brand new member wouldn't have a Well, I can't say that though, because like,
Yeah.
you know, the Board of Selectmen, I think Marty Healy is the vice chair this year, and he's brand new. So
It could, I mean, it could, depending on what happens with the vote. I mean, the fifth person, you know, can be a deciding vote.
right.
Whether we think that's likely or not,
Yeah.
it's not for us to say, I don't think. But I think,
Yeah, I think it'd be smart to just have a quick special meeting.
Yeah.
After the election.
Okay. All right. So we'll work on that on the agenda. We'll figure that out. All right. Does that bring us? I think that brings us to audience sharing. Anybody from the audience have anything to share at this point?
There are no questions from the audience at this time.
Did we skip over 3 retained executive session minutes?
That's just an agenda item for next month.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've been on Zoom all day. I'm a little tired.
zoomed out.
Oh, I
Yeah.
am zoomed out. Yes.
Okay. So I guess we'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second. Oops, I withdraw my second.
Okay. So we'll take a roll call vote. Roger,
Yes.
Paul,
Yes.
Jess,
Yes.
Jen.
Yes.
Okay. Thanks very much, everyone.
Thank you. and
Thank
have a
you.
good evening.
Have a good
day.
night.
Have a
Have a
great
good
night.
night.
Thank you.